We are going to proceed now with our first speaker, our wonderful Sharon, Smart Solar Shutesbury. And please give her your attention now. We're taking the new yard sign off the screen so that we can see Sharon.
Hi, everybody, and thank you. I am going to share my screen. I have a short presentation, and my job for this forum is to just let people know what's going on. And I want to say at the beginning that if I've made any errors, those are my own, and sorry about that, but I tried to do the best research I could to be very accurate. So I think mostly I am being very accurate. Okay, so as you know, AMP and Kohl's are suing Shutesbury. It's helpful to know that AMP was recently purchased by two companies, and it's now calling itself Pure Sky Energy Inc. And what is Pure Sky? Who are they? They're a carbon credit trading company at an international level. This is a commodity for them, and there's very little accountability. And what this means for us is that they are removed from anything at the local level. They have no idea who we are, our geography, our community, and how this will impact us. We're not clear right now if the plaintiff in this case is AMP or AMP and Pure Sky or just Pure Sky. I'm not sure if they're clear, but we will keep you posted about that. So why we're here is because Kohl's and AMP Pure Sky are suing Shutesbury, which is us, for most of us here who live in Shutesbury. So they're suing us on the basis that our bylaw makes it too difficult for them to make the profits that they want through exploiting our town. This lawsuit undercuts and undermines our democratic processes and threatens our health and safety. As a community, we've taken steps to protect ourselves from these exploitative practices that threaten our health and safety, while at the same time promoting sane solar development. And one way we have been doing this is through our new solar bylaw, which we established. And this was voted in last January 19th, 2023, by an almost unanimous vote. On this icy night, in spite of the weather, residents filled the gym at the elementary school to vote. Some people even waiting outside in the cold to protect themselves from COVID so they could vote. And this demonstrated that the will of the people of our town is really clear and strong. People wanted this new solar bylaw, and also that the residents understand the profound risks of large-scale clear cutting and batteries to our health and safety. So our new bylaw is very pro-solar, but it's pro-solar when it's appropriate solar. It allows for 15-acre sites in 9 different zones, and it makes having small solar on rooftops and private land easily possible for homeowners and landowners. So let's talk about this lawsuit. We're being sued on 3 different counts. One is that the old solar bylaw is unreasonably restrictive for Pure Sky and Kohl's, and that the new solar bylaw is unreasonably restrictive for them as well. And they're suing us because they're saying rejecting their subdivision plans was unfair. So the first thing I want to do is talk about these subdivision plans and what happened. So on the day of January 19th at town meeting, Kohl's dropped off plans to the town hall for 4 sites of subdivisions in an effort to avoid being bound by the new bylaw. So right before the meeting. Now, by law, an applicant such as Kohl's is required to submit any such plans at least the day before, not on the day. And they're required to submit the plans through registered mail or by showing up at a planning board meeting. But instead, Kohl's did not send it through registered mail, was late by a full day, and did not bring them to a planning board meeting. The planning board of our town is required to hold them accountable to state law procedures. So they had no choice but to reject Cole's plans. Following the legal guidelines is also imperative for our legal protection. Breaking state rules leaves us legally vulnerable. So that complaint, we are saying, like, we really just didn't even have a choice on that. So this is all pretty simple. With our bylaws, they can't make as much money as they want. Given that this lawsuit goes against our democratically approved solar bylaw that was voted in by a huge majority, we can know that neither Coles nor Pure Sky care about our interests, health, and safety. They look out for themselves, and only we can look out for our own needs. I want to say also that if you want to learn more about the proposed large-scale solar ground-mounted projects, you can look at smartsolarshutesbury.org, and there's a presentation about exactly where these are and how they affect the watershed and that kind of thing. So we're not going to talk about that tonight. We're just talking about the lawsuit. But don't we need large-scale solar development to reach state climate goals? We do need solar, but we need it sited in appropriate places. Sacrificing forest lands for solar is absolutely inappropriate. Protecting forests has been identified as a core factor in reducing our carbon footprint. Forests sequester carbon, and in our town, among other services, they filter our water, our drinking water. They are essential to our ecosystems and our efforts to combat climate change.
And Sharon, I apologize. There are 6 people who have not identified themselves. Those people have received a direct message. Please identify yourself. This is the second request. And if you do not respond, then the tech person will take you out of our meeting. Thank you.
So yeah, if you just click on your name in the participants, you click on participants and then click on your name, you'll see an option to rename yourself.
And
Okay,
please add your last name.
So the lawsuit is based on what is sometimes referred to as the Dover Amendment. And here's some information about exactly what that is that I won't read, but it was written in 1985 before the concept of large-scale solar existed. It was written to help homeowners freely put solar on their rooftops and properties. Industrial solar companies and large landowners now abuse it to apply legal force to push their agenda on small communities. And this exemption says no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit or unreasonably regulate the installation of solar energy systems or the building of structures that facilitate the collection of solar energy, except where necessary to protect public health, safety, or welfare. So this is what's being used to stop towns from regulating solar regardless. And there is a case in Waltham that's really being used as a precedent because Waltham lost this case. And it's important to know also that the circumstances and impact of the siting in Waltham are very different than our community, which depends on our groundwater for health and safety. So there are a couple of bills that are up right now. And in fact, last week there were hearings on these bills, and many of us attended those hearings and spoke. The bill was presented by our representative who's here, Aaron Saunders, the H3230. And it changes that exemption so that it's much more protective for us. And you can see what I put in bold is what was added: preserving forest lands, agricultural lands, or wetlands. And another bill that was presented by Jake Oliveira is basically the same. So these 2 bills are up right now and they really need your help. And so we will be telling you later tonight how you can help get these bills through, because if they go through, they'll not only protect us, but they'll protect a lot of other small towns who are also finding themselves in untenable circumstances. Okay, so the specific objections of Coles AMP to our bylaw are, there's 7 points. One is that the bylaw limits large-scale ground mounted solar to 15 acres in size. So our response is that 15 acres is large-scale solar, and there are many examples of profitable large-scale ground mounted solar installations that are 15 acres or less. So it's only limiting them to make as much money as they want to. That bylaw requires that the bylaw requires 4 times the acreage in addition to the acreage used for the solar development. This is to preserve forested land while allowing solar. And it's also scalable, like a 15-acre solar installation requires that there are 60 acres of forest preserved in order to have that, and 10 acres would require an additional 40 acres. That the bylaw limits 1 solar development to each of the 9 designated zones in town. So the way it is now, there are zones that are getting such a heavy dose of this clear cutting for solar, and zones that don't have any of it. And by limiting it 1 solar development per zone, it maintains the contiguous forests and is not concentrating the industry in one part of the town, which is entirely fair. They are saying that the bylaw prohibits solar development access from unpaved roads. And this is for public safety and erosion prevention. And we know this from the lived experience of having massive trucks traveling up and down the road. If there's a battery fire and the fire engines have to get there in the middle of winter. But our bylaw gives them alternatives, like depending on the site, they could apply for a waiver, and chances are they'll get it if it's not a long way down a dirt road or on a high grade, or they have the option of paving the road. The bylaw prohibits the use of herbicides and pesticides. Well, Wheelock was built. Wheelock is a current solar site in Shutesbury. It was built with these conditions, and it's working fine without herbicides and pesticides. And these sites are in drinking water watershed, making herbicides and pesticides particularly dangerous for us. And the bylaw limits land development on slopes of more than 15%. But 15% is very steep, and no construction or development is allowed in Shutesbury on such slopes. It's not particular to solar. And this restriction is to protect us from flooding, failure to supply aquifers that fill our wells, erosion, and water pollution. And finally, that the installation is prohibited in Biomap 2, critical natural landscape core habitat. But it's the state that designates this status to protect important lands. And even the SMART regulations ostensibly prohibit subsidies to projects built on Biomap 2 land. So those are the points that they have chosen to, say are not fair, just so we all know. And we're scared. We're scared of the cost of the lawsuit for our town. However, we're more scared of the prospect of this threat to our water, roads, wildlife, climate resilience, and we're more scared of our democratic process being undermined by big business. But we can prevail. We really can prevail. And it's important to know that this suit against Shutesbury, small towns all across the state are paying attention to what's happening in Shutesbury. This is a really important case on a state level. And what we do here has an impact on many other small communities in the state. We have a chance to change something with this case that would help many other acres of forest and many other small communities. So it'll set a precedent to protect so many other vulnerable towns. So, we say that to inspire you, like let's do this, let's fight this. And we think we have a really good chance because it's just so common sense. It's a no-brainer in this town. So thank you. That is the update about the case. And just to say that we will be continuing to update you as things change. And I hope this was useful for you. So back to Elizabeth. Thank you, everyone.
Sharon, thank you for your considerable depth of knowledge. We really appreciate it. We are asking at this point that people please identify themselves by last name. And we are happy to have you in. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. If you would be kind enough to identify yourself with your last name, that would be great. And we are moving on at this point. Remember that PDF, this PowerPoint, will be available in the chat. And Sharon, we had talked about closing the chat, and I believe you are the only one that can do that right now. And then we'll open the chat after the last speaker. Thank you. Representative Aaron Saunders is our next speaker, and we're really pleased that he is able to take the time to join us here. He serves as the state representative for the 7th Hampton District. And listen to these towns, because boy, are these the towns that are impacted about our concerns as well. Belchertown, Ludlow, New Salem, Pelham, Petersham, Shutesbury, and Wendell. Many of these towns have issues, and we could go into depth about it, but we're really looking forward to having Representative Aaron Saunders speak. Before he came to the legislature recently, he amassed over 20 years of experience in local, state, and federal government, including 6 years as chief of staff to former Senator Gail Candaras. I hope I said that correctly. So you can go online, and we will put his email up there. He's also on Facebook, and we look forward to having you communicate with our representative. He always answers us back. So thank you, Aaron. Go ahead. You are on full screen.
Aaron,
We cannot. Oops, we can now hear you.
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth and Sharon, for the wonderful overview of this acute issue that Shutesbury is facing, but it's not unfortunately a news story for the Commonwealth. And just a word of appreciation for everyone who took the time today to be here, your continued efforts in ensuring that large-scale industrial solar developers are not able to take advantage of our small, rural, and vulnerable communities. There's a reason that these issues are happening in communities like Shutesbury, communities like Wendell, and it is not because our municipal governments have millions upon millions of dollars in our legal defense funds. It makes this work all the more important as we engage not only in the courts, but also in the State House. So if it makes sense for folks here, I want to maybe spend a couple of minutes, say, level setting. I'm going to go light on the challenges that are in front of us because I think I wouldn't be able to hold a candle to what Sharon did, and I know Meg is going to present a tremendous amount of context around this as well, and then maybe finish by offering what I think are some steps forward that we can take in the legislature as a Commonwealth, but it could only do so through the continued support and involvement of the folks at this meeting. So I maybe wasn't alone in reading the news about 2 tropical storms in the Atlantic in the middle of June, with what is maybe a worn out term, unprecedented tornadoes through the middle part of the country. And it seems every day we are reminded through weather-related tragedy of the consistent impacts of climate change and the escalating impacts of climate change, never mind the devastating heat wave that's going through Texas and the southern part of our country. And I don't believe I need to spend a lot of time with this group on why we need an urgent transition to renewable energy. But it's important to understand where we are. The New England region, the 6 states of New England in 2022 had 11% of our energy come from renewable sources. 11. And this is after a long time talking about the need and tremendous money and effort moving forward to stand up offshore wind, to take some not so responsible steps towards solar, but some responsible steps. So we have a tremendous amount left to do. And as we make this transition to renewable energy, we're also doing so at a time where we're electrifying industries, namely building and transportation, adding to the electrification of our daily lives. Most notably, we see this through the uptick in electric vehicles. And the challenges are there, but we have to take the steps moving forward, whether it's continuing to invest in renewable energy resources, whether it's putting together, in the case of EVs, a charging system that actually makes them feasible, especially for small and rural communities. And we need to do this in a way that is responsible. And I think I'll borrow Sharon's phrase that clear cutting our forests is maybe the least responsible way to add to our renewable energy portfolio. And notwithstanding the benefits of solar energy, doing so through clear cutting, in my view, negates whatever benefit that might be. So there's a reason this happens, and it was alluded to a couple of times by Sharon, and it bears repeating, is that it's profitable to do so. And my view, and what I'd like to offer, is a public policy that does not reward the clear cutting of forests with public money or ratepayer money. We have a solar incentive program that we can spend hours and hours on the more boring parts of the so-called SMART program. But the fact of the matter is that there are very generous subsidies for these types of projects, and there does not have to be. There is no constitutional guarantee to you and I paying through our electric bill to developers for clear cutting forests. And just as easily as it was set up, we could remove that. But beyond removing that incentive for clear cutting forests, we need to take those public funds and invest it in places where solar works. We need to invest it in rooftops, in parking lots, in our built environment. And there are plenty of these spaces that we have now that, as we're moving around in our communities, you can look across and say, why isn't there a parking lot solar array there? And it's the exact same answer. It does not make money. And we need to make these types of installations feasible so that they're attractive to the developers. So instead of the developers spending their money and their investors' money on lawsuits against Shutesbury, they're spending their money on putting solar arrays on rooftops and parking lots in areas of disturbed land already, leaving our forests and our open spaces alone. As the chapter closes on this iteration of the SMART plan, I will be working with my colleagues in the legislature. We have a wonderful senator in Shutesbury. Joe Comerford is an absolute rock star, to ensure that the next solar incentive both incentivizes rooftop and parking lot installations and removes the incentive for clear cutting forests and putting solar installations in undisturbed open spaces. So I would say that that's item one. Item two, Sharon touched on, is House 3230. This would make a very, very reasonable amendment to the Dover Amendment by allowing communities to make reasonable regulation for any type of solar installation, and certainly large ground mount. The bylaw that Shutesbury adopted in January is, I would say, by a lot of standards, light touch. We have a type of bylaw that's in front of us that needs to be allowed to move forward, and I've asked the Attorney General in her review to do as much, because that is the initial thought in terms of how we are able to ensure that Shutesbury can look out for what's in its community's best interest. The second bill I'd want to mention is 3229, and this bill would incorporate some well-reasoned restrictions to ground mount solar that were included in the current SMART program, and that is precluding large ground mount installations in areas of biomap 2. It would preclude the installation of large ground mount solar, importantly, and this is not in the current regulation, in land that would be eligible for Chapter 61 protections, whether it's in chapter or not. The fact that it's eligible should signal that that land is important enough, at the very least, not to ensure that the taxpayers and the ratepayers are underwriting the disruption to it. So this is, none of these items are going to be easy, and they're not going to happen on their own. I was so happy to see the volume and the number of residents who came to testify at the June 20th hearing to really push for 3230 and ensure that communities, the 161 communities in Massachusetts that are considered rural, have the ability to make reasonable regulation. This is the first stop in committee, and it's going to take continued advocacy throughout the legislative session to get this over the line. And let me just sort of finish with where I began in saying thank you. These ideas did not come from Beacon Hill. The language itself, even, and the understand the need to provide this leeway for communities to regulate solar came from the community. And that's where these good ideas come from again and again. Thank you for that advocacy, because this idea didn't begin in Boston. It's not going to end there. And in between, it's going to take the continued support and advocacy of everyone at this meeting to continue to see it through. And with that, I'll close. I'd be happy to answer any questions at the end, and certainly please reach out if I can be of assistance on this or any other matter moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Aaron Saunders. As some of you may have noticed, we have been Zoom bombed. It is extremely distracting, and we have our tech person has taken care of it. We apologize. We're moving on right now, and we're moving on to attorney Margaret Sheehan. We know her as Meg, environmental lawyer, and a grassroots organizer and activist. Coordinator of Community Land and Water Coalition. A project to save the Pine Barrens is based in southeastern Massachusetts. And boy, are they active. I don't know if Meg sleeps at all. The coalition seeks to educate the public about how to get involved to save the land and the water in their community and beyond. and the list of her towns is quite long. I would love to be able to change the screen to Meg at this point. She has worked on solar siting issues longer than most of us, and she's been doing it since 2016. And there she is. Okay. So thank you, Meg. Go right ahead. No, we cannot hear you. We will try and get your audio going. Go ahead and try.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
And thanks so much for having me. Yes, we started working on this in 2016 when 25 acres of an area of critical environmental concern in Plymouth with ancient Native American trails was clear cut with just a building permit. And the town did then pass a zoning bylaw for solar, and it limits it to 5 acres of disturbed land with a few ins and outs here and there. So reasonable regulation of solar can happen at these smaller scales. And it's really important to be able to have the kind of power that Representative Saunders talked about with the solar bill, because there is no regulation of solar siting in Massachusetts without local zoning and general bylaw power. The state does not regulate any aspect of solar siting. They simply give out subsidies. And if you want the subsidies, you have to do certain things. But if you don't want the subsidies, it might be still so lucrative for you to cut corners on Biomap 2 or wetlands. So we really, really need this local zoning power. And this lawsuit really is a threat and goes to the heart of home rule power and zoning power in Massachusetts. And, you know, the legislature must be asking, why are there so many lawsuits on both sides? We have towns suing solar developers. We have towns denying orders of conditions for wetlands permits, like in Wareham. If you talk to DEP, there's something like in the last 10 years in one of the 4 DEP regions, there have been 250 solar projects built in or near wetlands. DEP is overwhelmed with all these requests for waivers and variances of the river projects in the riverfront. So it's really a huge threat to all these natural resources that we all have worked so long to try to protect. I thought I might leave most of my time for questions with regard to the procedural status of your lawsuit. As you know, the other side has filed a motion for summary judgment. I think there's probably other lawyers on here who can talk about it better than I can, but you know, this is a way to winnow down the issues in the case, and summary judgment requires the moving party, in this case, the plaintiff, to show that there's no genuine issue of material fact and that the court can decide this as a matter of law, like that right off the bat, that in this case, if this bylaw is unreasonable. Well, we know you're waiting for the Attorney General's office to make that decision. And the arguments that the plaintiff, Cowles, or whoever the plaintiff is, makes really do turn on factual issues. My takeaway from the complaint is that it's an economic argument, that it's not economic to build solar in Shutesbury at the scale required by the bylaw. So wouldn't it be interesting to see all of Cowles and Amps, or whoever their name is, all their financials that show, well, okay, why is it uneconomic? And what if you had to build it on 5 acres or 15 acres or on a paved road? What would that look like? And as you know, the prior speaker said, they're not entitled to any kind of subsidies, taxpayer subsidies, to do this. And the larger policy issues and the science all support the protection of forests. So yes, a lawsuit like this is a very expensive undertaking, and you should be prepared to raise a lot of money. So I would put in a pitch for that and save my time for questions, and also put in a pitch for another legislative hearing on a solar bill that resembles the one that was heard last week. And that is going to be heard on November 14 before the Joint Committee on Municipalities and Regional Government. And that will give all of us the chance to urge the legislature to do something about the Dover Amendment and its protections for large ground mounted solar. So put that on your calendar, and thank you.
Meg, we thank you so much for this information. And I just wonder if I can ask a question and then we'll move on. And the question is, could you explain to us from your legal perspective of what land court is?
Oh, sure. Land court is one of the specialized courts in the state. Like they say the Superior Court is the most distinguished common law court in the country and one of the oldest. And that's like a court of general jurisdiction, and they hear all kinds of cases. But the land court is specialized, and it deals with zoning cases and cases related to obviously land, titles, etc. In my experience, they are not very friendly to citizen plaintiffs. They tend to side with developers. They have heard a lot of solar cases and had a couple of trials.
Thank you, Meg. And to Representative Saunders and to Meg Sheehan, we really appreciate you staying on for the question time when the chat is reopened and people can post their questions there, and we'll do our best to follow along with them. We have a few announcements to make, but we also have a little bit of information that we'd like to share with you. And we just want to thank you for being here this evening and for following along with the information that is sent out to you. One of the big movers and shakers in our group for all that information is Jill, and Jill is going to speak now. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And again, thank you, Representative Saunders and Attorney Sheehan for joining us tonight. Before we do jump into questions, I want to share a few important actions that you can take to help protect our community from big corporate entities' actions that will turn our community, Shutesbury, into a sacrifice zone. And when I say sacrifice, I don't mean sacrifice for the greater good. What I mean is, as you've heard today, the project will sacrifice our health, our safety, and drinking water in our community. It will sacrifice important biomap to habitat in forests that protect essential habitat for many species. It will sacrifice the essential services that trees provide in terms of carbon sequestration, which national and international experts insist is essential to reducing our carbon footprint. And it will sacrifice the quality of life that draws us all to live here in this beautiful town and area within the Pioneer Valley. Not quite ready for that slide yet, Sharon, but that's okay. You've also heard today that that Coles and AMP or Pure Sky, we're not sure who, that this lawsuit is not only challenging our right to protect these important woods, it's attacking the democratic processes at the local level. After all, what is the point of creating and passing bylaws if powerful companies can simply sue a town to challenge those laws just because they don't like them, or if they can't make enough money or what they perceive to be enough money? They want to challenge these incredibly, massively powerful and wealthy companies want to make as much profits as they can. And the result is that it will wreak havoc in our community. We in Shutesbury, our tiny town of 1,800 people, are at the forefront of a trend that is happening around the world, which is that, as multinational companies become more powerful and operate more broadly across the world, federal and state governments are becoming less centralized, and more pressure is being shifted to small towns like ours to stand up against corrupt and invasive practices. And so in order for us to succeed in these really challenging circumstances, we have to work together. We have to work not just, as Smart Solar Shutesbury or this entity or that, but all of our town officials, our committees, our boards, we have to be unified in standing up to these corporate bullies to fight this lawsuit. And while the situation is scary, and indeed it is scary and threatening at our most basic level, we have to stay unified. We all love this community. Our town administrators, our select board, our planning board, the Conservation Commission, all of the committees and boards, and all the volunteer groups in this town. As citizens, we have to stand up and step up to actively demonstrate what we love and what this community means to us. We are the stewards to the woods that we treasure. We have to be the voice of reason to declare that as important as implementing clean energy solutions like solar is to reducing our carbon footprint, it is just as important that we protect other solutions like carbon sequestration and ecological services of our forests. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And we need to bring out the best in each other, not to succumb to fears and frustrations. So with that in mind, here are a few things that you can do to help. First thing I would ask is that today, tomorrow, the next day, this week, it has to be this week, please call the Telecommunications, and here's what's up on the screen right now. The Telecommunications Utility and Energy Committee, Senate and House contacts to urge them to move the bills H3230 and S2164, that's the House and Senate bills, out of committee. These bills, if they are passed, can really do a great deal to regulate solar siting reasonably, and will help us in the long run. So this is a really important step. This week is a critical week for it, so it's really important that we act now. If the bill doesn't get voted out of committee now, we won't have another chance for 1 to 2 years. It's a long stretch, and this is a really important step. Okay, next slide. The next thing. Okay, can you make the next slide, please? Please donate to support the legal fund that we have created to fight this lawsuit. The lawsuit will cost the town tens and likely hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight, and the significance of this lawsuit cannot be overstated. It will determine our future and the fate of many rural Massachusetts communities for many years to come. And you can find that on smartsolarshutesbury.org. Next slide. We are creating more yard signs. You've probably seen our amazing yard signs that were created by Remy, who is our tech person on this call, and they have also updated our signs to to represent the current situation. The visible presence of our united front against corporate corruption is powerful. If you are willing and able to put a sign up in your yard, and perhaps more importantly, distribute signs to friends and neighbors, please click. I'm going to put a link in the chat right now. And it's a bit.ly link. So hopefully you can see that. It's bit.ly/SSS lawn sign. And it just gives you the chance to click on that right now, or copy and paste it into your browser. And we ask that you sign up to either take a lawn sign, distribute lawn signs. As you can see here, the signs will be available at 712 Pratt on the road by next week. We ask if people can to contribute to cover the cost of these signs. We're trying to, each sign is about $10, it costs us about $10. So we're trying to keep our expenses down so we can put all of our money towards the lawsuit. So whatever you can contribute would be great. Next slide. We ask that you help, if you can help with outreach. We're a small but mighty group, and we do need help. So if you're interested in helping us out, whether you have whatever skills you have to bring, whether it's communication skills with websites, emails, list management, thank you notes, and other sort of general skills that you have to bring, we need it. We're at a critical phase here, and we can use your support. Just email us at smartsolarshutesbury@gmail.com. Lastly, spread the word. So it's really important, when it comes to the press, we're putting out letters to the editor, but the more people that put out those letters to the editor, the more likely that topic is going to be recognized by the bigger press, like the Boston Globe and the New York Times. So it actually does make a significant difference for more people to contribute. So if you're interested in writing a letter to the editor, or you want help with that, we can guide you on that, but it really does make a big difference. In addition to that, if you are involved with community groups or nonprofits or other grassroots organizations, or just have friends and family, let everyone know about what's going on in this situation. This is not a situation that's limited to Shutesbury, and what happens here will impact communities all over the state and probably well beyond. I think that's it. Oh yeah, and the last piece is, please do support our town officials. We want to let them know that we care about this issue. Let them know that we appreciate their hard work, and let them know that you're paying attention. They're doing their hard work, and we're doing ours. It takes all of us. So please do reach out to our local officials and let them know. Thank you. So I think we can, Elizabeth, I'll pass it back to you, and we can open it up to questions.
Thank you. What a beautiful slide to end on, Jill. Our precious water system. And it does run down from the top of the hill all the way down into the Atkins Aquifer in Amherst. We are about to move to the next phase of our work, and we are awaiting one more speaker, or maybe not. Are you on, Carlos, or would you like to move on?
I think we can move on and use the time for question and answer.
It's now 7:53, and I just want to say thank you to the speakers, Representative Saunders, Attorney Sheehan, Smart Solar Shutesbury, hardworking people, Sharon, Jill, Carlos, and also just a little clarification. The sign was made by Duran Fernandez O'Brien. The tech is Remy Fernandez O'Brien, no problem. What we're going to try and do for the next little while is to just note a couple of things. And one of them is, how do I get the recording? You will get information about that, and we will guide you, because we know that some people are not native speakers to technology, and we're happy to guide you through those. We know that we have people online right now who have asked questions, and we have people who are available. When Jill mentioned, let our town officials know, those are volunteers as well as paid people, and they will receive your phone call. You can call town hall and just let them know. They will also receive your emails, and if you go to townofshutesbury.org, you will be able to access all of them. We will also include information as we go along on the website, and boy, could we use some more website help, because we're tap dancing as fast as we can. And one of those things is the one that Meg mentioned, which is the legislative hearing on November 14th. Let's see, I think that might be all. And so what we're going to do right now is hearing that this is going to be written in the Montague Reporter, which is terrific. And please note in the chat that background information on this impact is on our website, smartsolarshutesbury.org/background. And that we are appreciative of everyone's identifying themselves, participating in this, because not only do we have the speakers and the tech to appreciate Smart Solar folks do, but also you as attendees. And we hope that this forum will activate you, because we have a lot of work. And as I think it was Sharon mentioned, it's scary. It's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. We need your help. So what I'm going to do is go down the questions, and if they haven't been answered by someone, and that is the submission of the intent to install large-scale solar on January 19th. I don't quite understand, but it says something like, doesn't that submission make that move an illegal act, one that we could argue in the court of law? I suggest that you get in touch with the town and give that information out, unless someone wants to answer it. And I can see Jill, Aaron, Meg, and Sharon right now visible. And so maybe what I should do is move to seeing more people so that I can call on folks, because you don't need to see me. Okay, so I am moving down the questions right now. And the question is just a technical one. Can the slide info be posted into the chat? Yes, we have said that we are going to be putting those in a PDF format. Sharon has volunteered to do that. Thank you, Sharon.
They've already been posted.
Wonderful.
And I'm wondering also if people could raise your hand if you have a question too.
Okay, let me just finish these and then we'll do a visual. Thank you. So the closed captioning was in the way of the phone number for Senator Barrett's office, and we will put that on smartsolarshutesbury.org's website so that you can call Senator Barrett and be an effective participant. Thank you.
It's already there. Remy put it on the chat already.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
also
you.
on the website already.
Okay. So I'm looking for the question and what to do about the statement of people should know that the case is complicated by the fact that our elected select board and hired town administrator have been enabling Coles and Amp Pure Sky. This is the opinion of this writer since the beginning of 2020. Also, that the suit has been brought against the town represented by the people who agree with the plaintiff. So Smart Solar Shutesbury will not be admissible in court, and the question is what to do. And if there is someone who wants to raise their hand and answer that.
I would like to answer that.
Thank you, Carlos.
Regardless of the politics in town or how we may perceive the politics, the road to winning this is to be present. The road to winning this is to be aware, is to pay attention. And if there's any concern about the select board, what we should do is to attend every meeting en masse. And so what I would like to do, besides the other actions that Jill suggested, is that everybody makes it who is here and who is concerned about this, that you make it your business to attend the governance meetings in Shutesbury, the meetings of the select board, the meetings of the zoning board, the meetings of the planning board. That is what is going to make a difference.
Thank you, Carlos. Really helpful. There are some statements also in the chat, and I'm not going to read them aloud, But people are wondering about these issues. And yeah, there's even more questions going on here. And so I'm going to turn to
Jeff
moving-
Weston has raised his hand.
Yeah, I see that now. And I was just about to move there. And so Jeff Weston, thank you for raising your hand. Go ahead. Please unmute yourself so that we can hear your question. Jeff, are you able to hear me? Oh, I'm so sorry, but you're still muted. Want to try again? No, we still can't hear you. If you want to try once more, and if not, then put it in the chat. No, we're still not getting you. I'm so sorry. Okay, the next person who has their hand up is Jane, and Jane and another person in the chat asked the question about, let us do a public event. What should that public event be? Is under discussion by Smart Solar Shutesbury, and organizing and producing an event takes a lot of hands, and so please volunteer to do that as well. And Jane, I'm going to call on you right now and ask both Jeff and Jane to take the hand down. Thank you.
Oh, okay. And I will take the hand down as soon as, oh, there it is. Okay. No, you basically said back, I saw somebody else mentioned, maybe an open meeting on Town Common. I would be more than happy. I know you guys are really overworked, because I know I wrote somebody an email about 6 weeks ago and never heard back about this whole suit. So I
sorry.
touch to definitely volunteer, because I think the more we can get people interested and excited, and just building community is how we can all get behind each other and do the things even that Carlos was suggesting. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jane. It's great to have participants like you who are taking an interest in doing something. So thank you. Tech person Remy, the question is, will the chat be available in the recording?
I don't think it will, no.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm going to try and answer as much as possible. There is a question and that has come up, will a person who is a volunteer for the town, and this has come up for other volunteers and appointed officials who stand to gain financially from Cole's suit and being able to build. Do we have someone who can take on that question? What should we do about it? It's a tough one. Okay.
I can take it on.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, you know, as Smart Solar Shutesbury, our mandate is to, you know, advocate for smart solar and really look at dumb solar and, you know, and what the problems are with not smart solar. And I think that we have to be careful about, you know, sort of rumors and things that really are not evidence-based. Like, I think the fact that this is so scary for us makes us worry, you know, like who's in our court, who's not in our court. But I think we all want to remain quite sober about those things. And I think what Jill said, that ultimately the way that I think Carlos said it too, the way we're going to win it is by being unified, you know, by as much as possible and by supporting each other. And so I think for Smart Solar Shutesbury, we just want to kind of keep our eye on the ball of trying to win this case in the best way we can and using skillful means. And, you know, being aware of what the obstacles are, but not necessarily overinflating them or being, you know, sidetracked by fearful thoughts of people not being on our side. Anyway, that's, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm also, you know, knowing the other people in Smart Solar Shutesbury so well, I think that we're all trying to keep our eye on the ball and keep our hearts in a really positive direction towards solution-based. I don't know if anyone else has anything to say about that. Yeah.
I'm noticing that Jill has her hand up.
Yeah, you know, absolutely, Sharon, I completely agree. And I think what my experience has been is that, you know, the more that we're involved, the more we realize that there are pathways, you know, and it's not a simple solution. It's not a straightforward answer, but as we continue to advocate and really put our hearts and souls into this, the pathways become more clear, and we become more clear where the weaknesses are, you know, in the lawsuit and in the, you know, the opposition's approach. And then we become more clear on how we can win and how we can be successful in protecting. And I think, you know, if we stay focused on that and we stay focused on just staying engaged and doing as much as we can. I mean, I really, that has been my experience, that it's becoming more clear that we really can win this thing if we just continue to move forward. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take a lot of energy, a lot of commitment, and, you know, all of our actions.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, and we don't want to be blind, but we also don't want to be divisive. And so, yeah.
Thank you. I see that there are 2 hands up, and I also would like you to note that the Venmo for donations is now in the chat, and you can scroll to one of the last ones. And John has a question for who is our attorney. Thank you for asking that question, John. Our attorney, we are in the process of hiring. So if you have a suggestion, if you want to work with us about it, that'd be great.
We, you know, I think that's not a straightforward answer, because we do have, like, there is the town attorney who's working on this case.
Oh, thank you, Jill.
So, you know, Donna McNichol is the town attorney, and she is, you know, the attorney who is assigned to work on this case, this lawsuit. And, you know, she is committed. That is our understanding, is that she is committed to this case. We are committed to making sure that she is successful and that the town is successful. We are also looking to, you know, supplement the legal fees, whether that means, and we don't exactly know what that means, whether it means supporting the town lawyer or some other aspect of providing, you know, expertise towards this case. But that is what we are looking to do with our legal defense fund. So the thing is, there are a couple of different avenues here that the town is going at. One is the fighting this the lawsuit against the solar bylaw, and there's also an issue around, you know, this wetlands bylaw. So there are legal issues in multiple arenas that are being dealt with at the same time. But we're not talking about the wetlands. We can talk about that another time. That may actually require additional legal support.
I noticed that there are a couple of questions, but Renee has been so patient and she has her hand up. And I'm going to call on Renee right now, and Carlos has his hand up, and then we will try and answer some of the questions that are in the chat. So Renee, oh, what happened to you, Renee?
Okay.
There
So
you are.
I am from Amherst, and, you know, one of the founders of Smart Solar Amherst. And I don't want to take us off the subject of the lawsuit, which I think is extremely important, but we have to see this as this is really a regional issue, and it's really a statewide issue because it affects all these small towns. And now, as we're seeing Shutesbury having this lawsuit, we're looking at Amherst developing a bylaw, and they are in their bylaw committee, they're talking about, well, we don't want to even set a maximum because we're scared of being sued. So this is why Amherst, Pelham, Leverett, I mean, this is why this whole area, rural towns from all over Western Mass really need to help you with this and to understand that this is an issue that affects all of us very deeply. And, our towns may have borderlines, but they're arbitrary, the forest goes on and on. So I hope that we can together figure out a way to really get this word out and look at the ripple effect that this suit is having on other towns. A town like Amherst, to be scared to develop a bylaw that has some integrity and that has some righteousness behind it. And I'm sure it will affect other towns in the same way. So we need to support you, and we need to figure out a way to get the word out. So, regionally, we can be all contributing to your legal fund and helping each other in all these different ways and making sure all of our reps are behind this. We know Joe, as our senator is, but we have to, that's the other thing I was going to ask Aaron, if there are any reps from other towns who we should be really contacting and working with. So anyway, that's basically what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Renee. We really appreciate you as our neighbor, and we look at it as the early Indigenous people did. There weren't town boundary lines. And whenever we have an event, and we should have done that tonight, we want to say that we honor the land that they lived on. And we are now moving over to the next question. Carlos Fontes, would you like to speak?
Yeah, it's not a question, Elizabeth, but something I see on the chat that there is some energy from people who want to do something, want to take the next move. There are people who are concerned about who is on our side and who is not. I want to say that these are all valid concerns in a situation that is not yet clear. We don't know exactly how this is all going to evolve. However, what I would want to say is I would like to, and it bears repeating, the way forward here is through really coming together. The way forward here is to build a community. And so I encourage people who really feel moved by their concern to do something, to really get in touch with us, with Smart Solar Shutesbury, and tell us that you are ready to work with us, planning next actions, whatever it is skill that you have. We need people to come and get in touch with us and to help us form community. The other thing I wanted to say is that, yes, we have talked about the environmental issue and the economic issue and all of this. There is also an ethical issue here. I mean, we all know, at least I think that we all know, that what is happening is wrong. To have the largest private landowner in Massachusetts ally with a very large multinational corporation and force a town into this kind of legal battle with the asymmetry of resources is wrong. And is also wrong because the town made its will known by voting for the solar by law and also for the wetlands by law. And so I would like to ask you to to not feel shy with people that you come in touch with, to talk from your heart and to tell them why you feel that this is wrong. And I think it also bears for us to direct ourselves to our neighbor, to Coles, and to speak with representative of Coles and let them know why is it that, how we feel about having to face this, how we feel about the idea of losing the forests that clean our air, how we feel about the possibility of having these large industrial projects that are going to threaten our water and create lots of environmental problems. So to finish, I think there is a place here for us to speak from our hearts and to come together, to form community. And it's best to focus on solutions. We need to understand the full extent of the problems, but we need to come together and focus on concrete steps we can take together forward that can provide solutions to the problems that we are facing.
Carlos, thank you for speaking from your heart. We so appreciate it. We have two questions, and it's really interesting because people are hanging in there and we're over an hour, and we hope that you can hang in there just a little bit longer. I know that you want to hear from Sharon and you want to hear from Representative Aaron Saunders. So go ahead, Sharon.
I wanted to add about some of the issues that have been raised. If people have information they think that could be helpful, to please contact us and we can see how that information could be shared with the town. So we're really open to hearing about what your experience is. And then I also really wanted to thank Renee for bringing up that we shouldn't be in this alone, that these borders of our town and Shutesbury being sued doesn't mean this is just a Shutesbury problem. And so as much as you can spread this out to other towns, where other towns can, make it their own issue, is really great. And isn't it interesting, like we had this massive turnout for passing our new solar bylaw. And I just want to applaud the courage of the town of Shutesbury, to take a risk, to say no, because we knew we are setting ourselves up to conflict, and I think it takes a bit of a backbone, but it's also, we're taking a hit and it's exhausting and scary. And so, in that way, I want to also again say, we can use all the support we can get for what we're trying to do. We're an awesome town. Isn't it so cool that we did that? I think we should be proud of ourselves as a town. So that's all.
Thank you. That's a lot right there. There was a question about Attorney McNichols recusing herself, and you can get in touch with smartsolarshutesbury.org to get that question answered. And there's a suggestion in the chat about boycotting Coles, and we can also talk about that one. And I'm going to move on right now to Representative Aaron Saunders. Thank you.
Thank you. This is an incredibly robust discussion. I just wanted to be responsive with regard to the question and comment about the bill. So there's currently 7 co-sponsors. I would say unequivocally that just because a member is not a co-sponsor doesn't mean they don't support it, but we could always use more. So, currently Rep. Sabadosa from Northampton is a co-sponsor. Rep. Kuzmarek, who represents Fitchburg. I'm very happy to see the geographic diversity of co-sponsorship here. Representative Priscilla Sousa, who sits on the Energy Committee, is a co-sponsor. Representative Lewis from Framingham is a co-sponsor. So we could always use more, and I think the June 20th hearing in the show of support opened some eyes. And it's important that we continue to build on that momentum. And I recognize that is a big ask while so many of the folks on this call are in the midst of active litigation. And there's a lot of place for that energy to go, but I will continue to stay in touch as to how we move this legislatively as well.
Thank you so much. Your communication has been great thus far, and we really appreciate your presence tonight. And I'm trying to get to as many questions as possible, but what I'm going to do right now is speak to the closed caption people. And this is your opportunity to ask a question that you think maybe Smart Solar Shutesbury can answer. We can't answer all of the ones that are in the chat right now, but we know that closed caption can be a little tricky. And so we want to give you this opportunity. If there is anyone else who is differently abled and is struggling to communicate with us in some way, we are always open, and you can see in the chat that or go on smartsolarshutesbury.org to see our email address, because we really want to be in touch with you and we want to hear what you have to say. Sharon and Jill and Carlos, I believe that we are, oh, Jill has her hand up. Go, Jill.
Yeah, I'm just noticing a message that is suggesting that we rally people to get involved. And I do think that we will certainly follow up on this, and we'll consider, like, part of what we have to do is really be think carefully about strategically what's the biggest bang for our buck. So we will definitely look at rallying. If somebody wants to lead a rally, that would be an awesome way to get involved, you know. So again, smartsolarshutesbury@gmail.org. But also in terms of this sign, I did want to say that right now we're not really sure in terms of who the plaintiff is, whether it's going to be AMP or Pure Sky. This is something that we have to, it's just unclear right now. They still are AMP. It is still AMP who is litigating. So we have to find out, and that may take a few days before we find out whether it's AMP or Pure Sky, but we will absolutely address that and make sure that the signs are accurate before they're printed. I just wanted to address that.
Thank you for noting that to all of the participants tonight. And to all of the participants tonight, your presence is so appreciated, really appreciated. We are a tiny group. We are working with as many commissions and committees in town that are willing to listen and work with us, and we will support them. We so appreciate the hard work that's already been put in by town folks, and we welcome your suggestions. Please be in touch.
I wondered if Judy had her hand up. Did you want to
Pardon
say
me.
something, Judy? Sorry to interrupt.
No, please, Judy, go ahead. You want to do our finale?
Well, I'm not sure I wanted to do that, but it occurs to me that while we talk of rallies and while we talk of expressing our feelings, which I think is really important, and I know personally I'm on your side on this, and our planning board in Pelham is in the same place too. But I want to just underscore that this is a lawsuit, and what you really have to be concerned about is marshaling your facts and making sure everybody is speaking factually, because there are folks in the scientific community who disagree or who have variations on the idea of whether to protect solar in the forests or not and prohibit it. And so we have to be sure that we have accurate information and that we are all speaking in the same language. And I guess as a closing, Alexandra Dawson was a dear friend of mine, and maybe some of you knew her or knew of her, but she was an environmental lawyer. And I always remember her saying that there is no constitutional right to a profit. And whereas we want people in our society to be able to make some money, what we are really witnessing here are outrageous violations of the idea of making a profit. And this concerns me, as I hear it concerns some of you as well. So Pelham folks are largely in support of what you are trying to do. And this has been clear to us as we've adopted a bylaw very similar to yours. So we're in this, and stay tuned. We'll be as helpful as we can.
Thank you for your generous thoughts. I wrote that one down. There is no constitutional right to a profit. And your wise words. And we have met with the environmental chief in Maura Healy's administration, Melissa Hoffer, and I see many of the other people that participated from Wendell and Amherst and other areas. And yes, we're in this together. And we want to thank the speakers, the tech, everybody who's contributed just by showing up tonight. And that's a great way to end, Judy. Thank you. Good night, folks. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. And do go on our website. It'll all be there. Thanks.